Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. Thanks for joining me again. So I've got this request a bunch of times, but I still haven't done it, so I decided I would take the time to show you guys how I drill my tanks. Now, I have drilled in the last 2 years over 70 different holes in tanks. So this is the method that I use. You're gonna see a bunch of people out there that do it a bunch of different ways, but this is the method that I have found that works the best for me. So what I'll do down below is I will give you a listing that will depend on which bulkhead size you use to which size of the diamond hole saw you need to use. I'll give you a link to each one of those, and I'll give you a link to the one specifically that I use off of Amazon for each one of the different sizes. So that you know, the ones that I use are a little bit more of a higher end one, and the reason I do is because I drill so many holes. These typically, I've had them last for 50 holes, but the speed goes way down, whereas it may take 2 minutes to drill on a new one, it may take about 7 or 8 minutes to drill on an old one. So if you're just drilling 1 or 2 tanks, there's a lot of cheap ones that are out there. I'll try to list some of those down below also. Those are typically only really good for about maybe 3 to 4 holes at the most. That diamond stuff seems to rub off pretty fast on those things and makes it where they're just not worth using anymore. So let's go ahead and let's go out there and I can show you guys exactly how I do it. All right, as you guys can see, we are outside and I have a bunch of 20-gallon longs to drill. Exactly, I've got 12 of them I've got to get drilled. So let's go ahead and let's move over there and let's see how it's done. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the hole saw itself. You guys will see that it's diamond encrusted. So, you know, there's obviously a lot of diamonds that are mined that aren't good enough for jewelry, so they crush those down and they use those in a lot of diamond tip products because they're, you know, it's so strong and it has the ability to cut through just about anything. So as what you can see is this one is actually diamond encrusted. That's how these hole saws work. Now currently this is the bulkhead that I use. This has a 1/2 inch on both ends, and so the diamond hole saw that I use, it's just barely big enough to just slide over it. So it's basically about 1/8 of an inch or so bigger than the actual where the threads are, because the threads are what are actually going to go into the tank. Again, I'll list it down below what size you should use for each different bulkhead. The next thing that you need to have is you need to have some type of template that you're going to use. And so your template is what is going to put your bit where it is that you want it to drill. So this is my template, but let's talk about something before we do this. So these are 20-gallon longs, and as you can see, the thickness of the glass right here is probably about 1/4 of an inch thick. When you're dealing with 10-gallon or smaller, it's even thinner than this. So it doesn't take a whole lot to break your tank. So you've got to decide, you know, where on the tank are you actually going to drill. The strongest parts of the glass are going to be in the corners, especially down here in these lower corners, because it's glued to this piece and it's glued to this piece. So the weakest part of the entire panel is going to be right here in the center. So my suggestion, if you're drilling 10-gallon tanks, is do not drill in the center, because I have broken them there before. Drill someplace that it has a lot more support. I like to put them up here in the corners because that is, to me, where it has the most support. There are plenty of people that drill 10 gallons here in the middle, and they're really good at it, but I'm going to tell you, that's the most difficult place that you can drill the tank. So again, I suggest that you put them up here in the corner. Okay, so here we have this template that I've made. This one I just simply made out of some of the styrofoam insulation. You can make it out of wood or plastic or whatever you want to make it out of. And what I do is I take a wood hole saw and I drill this hole about 1/8 of an inch bigger than the actual hole saw. And as you can see, it's got a lot of play. It's really easy to move it in and out of there. So this just gives you a place where that you can get this thing lined up. And so the place that I have put this is so that I can line it up against the glass and against the top, so that I know my hole is going to go right there in the corner, and it's going to be just about the same place on every single tank. The way I do it doesn't have to be critical. It can be 1/2 inch off left or right, but this is going to get you within 1/8 of an inch every single time. So let's go ahead and let's clamp this down. Okay, so you can see now that I have this clamped down and it is ready to go. Next thing, let's talk about your choice in drills. If you guys are getting anything out of this, be sure and click that subscribe button down below. I'd really appreciate it so you guys can see when I have other videos come out. Okay, so here we have just a simple Dewalt cordless drill. My suggestion is for you not to use a cordless drill, because as you know, as you use a cordless drill, the lower the battery gets, the slower this thing goes. And whenever you're drilling glass, you want to keep it on high speed the entire time, and you can guarantee that by using one that plugs in. So that's specifically why I keep this cheap drill. This is just a, you know, $30 or so Black & Decker drill to use. Again, this is one that it's corded, so I can keep this thing going and I know it's going the same speed the entire time. Now, before you start drilling, you want to be able to protect the glass below, because when this piece of glass falls out of here, it's going to hit down there below and it can crack. So I just like to take a towel, paper towel or something, and put it down there to protect it. Okay, so the next thing that you need to do is you need to provide some type of lubrication and some way of keeping the drill bit cool. And so the reason that I like to use this insulation here is it kind of creates a tight fit between here and the glass. And so what I do is I just take, this is just normal plain Jane water, and I pour it in the hole like that. And as you can see, it pretty much just sits there. That way that water will stay in there for a long time and keep this thing lubricated and keep the hole saw from getting too hot. Alright, so before we get started, let's go ahead and let's talk about pressure. So when you are on a 10-gallon aquarium, again, this is a 20-gallon, but I want you to know, because a lot of you guys will be drilling 10 gallons, is how much pressure am I pressing on this drill? How hard am I going to press down on it? Whenever you're doing a 10-gallon tank, again, it's so thin. The only pressure that you want to put when you're on a 10-gallon aquarium is pretty much just the weight of the drill itself. So you're just going to kind of leave it in there, and you're just going to kind of hold onto it and keep it centered where you want it to drill, but you really want to put almost no pressure at all. You can lightly push, but you have to be very careful because it doesn't take that much to crack it. Now when you get onto a 20-gallon or 40 gallons or 55 gallons, those get really thick. You get to the point where you can put a decent amount of pressure, but I'm telling you right now, the only way that you're ever going to learn and understand the amount of pressure to put on these things is by doing it yourself. There's no video that can really explain to you the right amount of pressure. You have to be able to feel it in your hand so that you kind of learn the amount of pressure to put on it. Okay, so we've got the water in here, so now we're ready to drill. So when we put our bit in here, you remember this thing will move all around. So you just simply want to pick a corner and lean it against that corner and hold it against that corner, so that as you're applying a little bit of pressure, you're keeping it against that corner, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get it started. Okay, so we've got the bit in here, but we don't have it against the glass. We simply have it leaned up against the styrofoam right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn this thing on high all the way, and then when we've got it on high, we're going to lower it until we feel it touch the glass, and then we're going to leave it there. Okay, so when it hits the glass, you can feel it begin to grind on it, and you want to keep it in there for a little while. And one of the things you want to do, once you kind of get it set, once you kind of feel like it's kind of ground in there for probably about a minute or two, the easiest way that I found is you want to take the drill and just rock it just a little bit. Like rock it to 12 o'clock, and then to 6 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock, and then to 9, and then the opposite corners. So the whole time as you got this thing going full speed, you're slowly rocking it. Let me kind of show you here. And so you want to keep that rocking up pretty much the entire time until you're almost to the very end. Now you don't want to keep it on one angle too far, because you're going to end up drilling too far deep on one side. Now you can compensate for that in the end. It's not that big of a deal, but it's just easier to try to go straight through. Okay, after you've been going for a few minutes, if you want to, you can actually remove this now. So you can see, okay, so you can see here in the hole now, you can see that we've actually created the circle, and you can see that the bit just fits right in there now. And so we need a little bit of more water. As this white stuff builds up, that's the glass that's being ground down, you know, forming back in, or going back into its sand form. So you kind of want to keep that cleaned out, because that'll kind of slow you down a little bit. So you can take a little bit of water and kind of wash that out a little bit, and get a little bit of water back in there. And then you can start back up again doing the same thing. But again, make sure you're fully in the hole, and then start the drill bit back up on full speed. Okay, so it's getting too dry again, but we're almost through. So add a little bit more water. And now I'm not gonna be leaning it left or right anymore. I'm just keeping it straight on with just a little bit of pressure. Okay, so you can see that the glass fell through on the other side. Sometimes you might need to take a little bit of sandpaper, because sometimes it will chip just a little bit. But that, again, that's when I like to use silicone on all my bulkheads. That way, if there are any imperfections, it will fill it in. All right, there you go. There is how Jason drills his holes in all of his tanks for all of his overflows. I hope you guys got something out of this. Be sure, if you've got any questions, be sure and leave those down below, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So thanks again, guys, and God bless.